You've got a theory.
I've been working on, theory's a strong word. I've been working on a theory, Sam. I've been working on a theory, Sam. It's a strong word, but it's a theory. A thesis. What's another word for thesis? Postulation, Sam.
Oh, there it is.
I'm going to preface this with, I have done absolutely no research. Research. I've done no research. So I could be so wrong.
Yeah.
I could be about to say something that like everyone's like, we already know this.
He's done no research, but he's got a theory that he's been working on.
I'm calling it the 10-year bounce. Across mainstream pop, everything from pop punk to hip hop to actual like bubblegum pop to country, whatever. If there's an artist that experiences two major peaks in their career, they tend to come about 10 years apart. You have your breakthrough. It might be your first few songs. It might be when you go to a major label release, and it's because you're new. Part of a new genre. You have a distinct something that makes you an interesting artist. Then you kind of fade for a bit. Like you've had your explosion and now you're kind of like just part of the noise. About 10 years after your initial breakthrough, you have this second phase beyond the cultural relevance of your first initial breakthrough. And like, this is like your big peak period. 9 to 11 years, like in that bracket. Following that, you either have a long-term decline into nothingness, or you'll never be as culturally relevant, but you'll always be, people will remember who you are. I've got some examples. Taylor Swift had a sort of a build, a gradual build. In 2014, 1989 came out, biggest album. It was everywhere. All those songs, couldn't get away from them. Then the subsequent albums they were still successful, don't get me wrong, but nothing was 1989 level. 9 or 10 years later, between the release of Midnights at the end of 2022 and the Eras tour, 8.5 to 10 years later, she is the pinnacle of popular culture. For a more alternative take, Green Day, major label breakthrough, 1994 with Dookie. Fine albums, 95, 97, 2000. 2004, American Idiot. Redefined pop punk. Brought emo punk and pop punk back to the mainstream and made them a household name. Britney Spears obviously had success in like 97, 1998. Had her Britney breakdown.
Leave Britney alone.
But then Circus, 2008, she was, again, like pop pinnacle. So I've got some arguments for why. I think that audiences that are in their kind of like early to mid-teens, 14, 15, 16, when these artists have their initial breakthrough. And then about 10 years later, you're 24, 25, 26, you're at your peak disposable income to trashy music relevance. And so you're like, I'll spend $250 to go see them. And that like drives that cultural relevance. Part two, artists that break through from either genuine talent or they're just lucky are then sort of pushed through the major labels, grind them down a little bit. But then about 10 years later, they've gone through that cycle a few times and they're like back to basics. They're going back for what worked for us originally. And that's why they had their second blow up, because it's like back to that, like whatever the formula was the first time. That's why I think why this works.
I see you. I hear you. I disagree. Metallica, Ride the Lightning, 1984. Master of Puppets, 1986. The Black Album, 1991. 7-year span. Their three biggest albums, I'd say.
They didn't dip really in that time.
They went hit. They also put out And Justice for All in between. Kill 'Em All just before as well. I didn't grow up listening to Metallica, nor do I listen to them now. For all those Metallica fans out there, don't get angry.
They've maintained that peak pretty much all the way through over a 7-year period. Yep, that's fair.
Blink-182.
Initial peak, like 99, 2000.
I'd say Enema of the State was where everyone knew who Blink-182 were. Self-titled.
Yep.
2003, that came out.
Yep.
In 1999, circle back to around 10, 11 years.
Yep.
Until about 2011 with Neighborhoods, which didn't peak them again. No, it was probably not till about California that they sort of came back into the fold, and now they're back with Tom and, Bob's your uncle. But Paramore.
Huge gap.
I'll say they've had 2 peaks. They've had 3.
Triple peak.
They first rose in 2007 with Riot. 2013, they came out with the self-titled and a bunch of band changes. Arguably still in to use their biggest song. This is why their new album, 2023, self-titled, 2013.
It both works and doesn't work.
It is like science. It can be proven and disproven. This is musical science, ladies and gentlemen. If we've managed to maintain any listeners...
Yeah, if you're still here. Why?
This is why. Shit, that was bad.
No, I didn't mind it. Here's how I think we can figure out who's right in this situation. I've made a list of artists about 10-ish years from their last either major release or major cultural moment. Let's find out if they go back to being culturally relevant again. So A$AP Rocky, at long last A$AP in 2015. He's had some releases since then, a lot of guest spots and things like that. And he's got an album releasing at the end of this year. The 1975, their initial chart success was, but they're self-titled in 2013. Don't get me wrong, they've grown in success and popularity since then, but I think it was the first time they made a really big splash. Their next big splash next year or two. Tame Impala, Currents, dropped in 2015. Then Slow Rush was dog shit in 2020. Will they come back around? Childish Gambino, kind of peaked with like Redbone, Awaken My Love. Had like This Is America and a couple of like one-offs, but hasn't really had like an album that was like taking over. So I'm thinking like another year or two. Flume, he won Hottest 100 in the first time in 2016 with Never Be Like You, and has had a fine career. Is certainly not gone backwards. Do we see a bit of a Flume renaissance?
Well, it's an interesting theory. Keep your eyes peeled.
Again, it's a theory. It's just a theory, Sam.
It is a theory.
It's a theory.